This episode may contain adult themes and explicit language. Listener discretion is advised.
Sorry.
What's the trick in making my love stick? What's the trick?
Hello, and welcome to the Film Critic and the Common Man podcast. While other film podcasts might carry on affairs, we at least have a secretary who definitely knows what's going on. Every episode, we discuss a film from the perspective of a film critic and the perspective of a common man. We may not agree, but it certainly won't be boring. I'm your co-host, Ben Miller. I write about films for my own site, icecreamforfreaks.com, and I'm a member of the North Texas Film Critics Association, as well as the International Film Society Critics. You can hear me guest on other pods as the daily throughput of podcasting. I'm joined by my brother and common man co-host, a man who decided to marry his crazy girlfriend, Allex. Jake Miller, how you doing, buddy?
Doing all right.
We're in the midst of anti-Valentine's Day stuff. This is the last episode that comes out right before Valentine's Day, and we have the most anti-Valentine's Day movie ever, maybe. But
this probably would have fit in better in our scary movies back in October.
Absolutely. But I mean, to each his own. We're talking about Fatal Attraction, directed by Adrian Lyne, written by James Dearden, based on the book Diversion by James Dearden, starring Michael Douglas, Glenn Close, Ann Archer, and Stuart Pankin, co-starring Ellen Hamilton Latson, Ellen Foley, Lois Smith, Jane Krakowski, and Fred Gwynn. Opened on September 18th, 1987. Big box office hit, $156.6 million domestic, $163 million international, $320 million on a $14 million budget. Nothing to shake a stick at for an adult thriller. Not bad at all. Big winner at the big acclaim, as well as the Oscars. At 6 Oscar nominations: Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actress for Glenn Close, Best Supporting Actress for Ann Archer, Adapted Screenplay and Film Editing. Lost all 6. It lost mostly to The Last Emperor, which didn't lose anything, and then Actress and Supporting Actress both to The Ladies of Moonstruck. Rotten Tomatoes really surprised me. 75% from critics, 72% from audiences. I guess it's just, this is not exactly a feel-good movie. So
I can definitely see why that would be low. I mean, it's I think it's I'll just go ahead and say I think it's a good movie. I think it's well acted and everything.
Yeah.
This film of any that we have ever done was the most anxiety inducing of any of them.
And I know exactly why. I know the specific scene and the specific sequence. You're just like, I am so nervous.
Dude, I was uncomfortable.
I
once
assume,
it starts kicking off, I'm like,
this is what
gets worse and worse.
This movie gets more than anything else. I get it. I will get into the plot summary of Fatal Attraction real quick. Luckily, the plot wise, this is one of the more basic ones we've had to deal with. Dan Gallagher is Michael Douglas. He is a successful, happily married Manhattan lawyer with his wife, Beth, played by Ann Archer, and his daughter, Ellen. He runs into an editor for a publishing company, Allex Forrest, played by Glenn Close. They're immediately attracted to each other, but just kind of like flirty. And then Beth and Ellen go out of town for a little bit, and he decides to have an affair. It's a mutually assured thing. They're having wild, crazy sex essentially all this time. And Allex begins to kind of get a little clingy. So Dan spends time with her, a little bit more time. And then he's like, okay, well, this is like a little thing. I'm married, so I'm going to take off. And she goes, no, I need you to stay here. Manipulates him into staying another day, and then slits her wrist for the sake of attention, essentially to keep him there. He stays with her, recuperates, but essentially it's like, okay, like this is over. My wife and daughter's coming back. I'm done with this. Okay, cool. He leaves. Allex isn't done. She calls Dan all the time. She says she's pregnant, says keeping the baby. She's like, this has nothing to do with me. He's like, you got to take responsibility. Back and forth. He changes his phone number. He moves. Everything he does, she just figures out a way to try to screw up his life. He tries to move everything out of the way to try to cover his tracks, and she just keeps being more in the way. He tries to get a restraining order, and the cops kind of see through it and go like, listen, you kind of got to own up to your adultery. If you want a restraining order, you have to admit this. So Allex essentially goes over the edge and like kills Ellen's pet rabbit, famously boiling it over the stove. And then Beth is like, what is going on with all this? Dan admits his affair, admits the Allex's supposed pregnancy. Really, yeah. But
I've had some tough combos, but man,
that's I want to get into that scene because that's a great scene. But man, now that being said, once that scene happens, kind of the air lets out a little bit. The tension is just like, well, I don't have anything to hide because I admit it. But regardless, Beth is like, well, you got to get out of here, you dick. Like, you got to, yeah. But so then Allex decides to go and pick up Ellen from school and like takes her around town for a day. And you're like, that was a problem. Beth tries to find Ellen, gets in a car accident, which makes her hospitalized. Allex drops off Ellen unharmed, but obviously damage done. Dan thinks about killing Allex, pretty much beats her a little bit, and then thinks about killing her, changes his mind and leaves. Beth recuperates at the hospital. Ellen's fine. They all go home. Beth forgives him. It's like, okay, it's fine. So Beth is at home recuperating, trying to take a bath, and Allex appears with a kitchen knife ready to kill Beth. Dan goes back and forth with her, tries to strangle her in the bathtub, assuming she's dead. Is fine. She emerges from the bathtub. Beth comes in, finishes off the job by shooting her, kills her.
Bang. Thank God.
Thank God. And that is that. She finally dies. Then they all live happily ever after. I mean, what an experience in general.
There will be no trust issues later or
no. This is
anything.
Fine. This is fine.
Hey, we all go through rough patches, right?
So I like what I like how you touched on, and this movie does an exceptional job of just keeping the tension of what Dan has to go through with trying to like he never is like, no, like I didn't do anything wrong. He knows he did wrong, and his covering of the tracks, it's simultaneously like, okay, I'm trying to cover my tracks, but this lady's nuts and I need to handle this. And there's a simmering tension for the better part of 45 minutes in the middle of this movie.
Dude, I'm not joking. My stomach was like getting upset. Here's like what that time period in the movie reminded me of was, where he's trying to keep it covered up. He's trying to cover his tracks. And it's just increasingly looking like he's not going to come off scot-clean. Like it's going to get worse.
Something's going to get better. Yeah.
And that level of anxiety where, like I messed up, I've been lying, I'm getting caught, I'm trying to keep lying my way out of it. But this isn't ending well. It literally reminded me of, I was probably like in first or second grade, and I had like khaki shorts on or something. It was like new school year.
Sure.
It was early,
nice, clean, newer clothes.
Yeah. And I had, new school supplies and stuff. And let's see how well these scissors work. And I cut like 3 or 4 holes in these brand new pants or shorts or whatever. Well, Mom picks us up. I'm in the truck with her. She's like, what the heck happened? And I was like, all these bullies,
no.
they held me down and they cut up my pants. Well, she's like,
we go into school ready to yell at teachers.
She's going back to the school.
Oh no.
So
and as a first grader, you're
she's-
like,
as she's going back, I'm like, oh, I'm screwed. Like, she's like, what were their names? And I'm like, I think
trying to think of names.
Bill,
Yeah,
Tom.
trying to think of guys who aren't actually at the school because nobody's actually going to get trouble. Like,
Yeah. I was like, I think they ran away. They'll probably never be back or anything. Like,
yeah.
I was like, no, don't talk to the teacher. But anyways, like as we were pulling up into the parking lot, I was like, Mom, I cut him with my own scissors. I don't know why.
Yeah.
And then go back home and I got mine.
Sure.
But
I mean,
just that tension of like, oh, I fucked up.
It's not, you know, I one of these degrees behind me is public relations advertising. And in public relations, one of the big things they tell you, it's like, it's not the crime. It's always the cover up. The crime's not the problem. And yes, the adultery is the issue. Obviously, it's the main overarching thing, but he's trying so hard to keep it to okay. I had it's the big difference between this and like other adultery stories is he has his weekend and that's it. He doesn't go back. He doesn't want to go back. He's like, this is that. He's like, I shouldn't have probably done that. I'm gonna go with my wife. And he's trying to keep it separate. He's not trying to have his cake and eat it too. He's more like, I've made this mistake and I just don't want my mistake revealed.
Yes.
So like,
in that aspect, it reminded me, there's a scene from Seinfeld where George is saying worlds collide.
Yes.
The worlds are colliding.
Yes.
And you know, it's like one aspect of his life and another aspect of his life that he doesn't want. Yeah, so he's just he doesn't want to keep her on the side. He doesn't want a side deal or anything.
Nope. He said this is and
had a stupid weekend. I love my wife and kid. And
one of the more interesting things about this movie, it kind of sides with Allex in certain kind of arguments. There was arguments she's making, like when he's like, well, I'm not coming back to you. I'm not falling in love with you. And she very astutely, like, all you wanted me is for sex. You admitted, and all the things she said, you're like, yeah, totally. He did that for sure. Like he's like, this is just a sexual thing. I didn't want anything from you. And all the shallowness, he kind of has to go, but I'm married.
I treated you like a cheap whore.
Yeah.
And I've got shit at home and you ain't the type of chick I'd take home to mama, I guess.
That's a good way to put it. This movie is kind of has the allure for what it is mostly because of Glenn Close and Michael Douglas together. Their chemistry, whenever they're at it, they're really going at it. Like as far as like the actual sexual stuff, it's like there's no half-assing there. Like, elevator BJs and kitchen rendezvous and all that kind of it is when it is on it.
Little suck it.
Yes, indeed.
For our audio listeners, I was pointing at my nipple.
That's why we have the audio to fall back on. But Glenn Close being the main draw in this movie, for all research that I looked up, nobody involved with this movie outside of Glenn Close wanted Glenn Close in this movie. Glenn Close was dying to be in this movie, and everybody said she's not right for this movie. She's the wrong actress. And then she kind of pulled out all the stops and then went, okay, maybe we're wrong. And sure enough, it worked out. But
she was like, oh no, I can be fucking crazy.
I can be crazy and hypersexual and be that type of, and just like, yes, you can. And sure enough, now Michael Douglas on the flip side, we talk about like actors with their baggage. You wouldn't talk about a guy with the kind of built-in baggage of, hey, we kind of root for him and his wife, but absolutely seemed like he would cheat on her. Like just this, but I have but I love Michael Douglas in this movie. I think he's great in this movie.
Yeah. Probably the only other movie I can think that, rivals performance wise is maybe what is it, Falling Down? Is that
Yes, Falling Down. Yes,
Yeah.
the One Bad Day, I mean, a cable classic when we were a kid. When we were
Yeah.
kids, Falling Down was great. We're like, yeah, hold up the McDonald's,
Yeah.
shoot that guy, absolutely, kill the neo-Nazi, yeah.
Yeah.
So I really love Michael Douglas in this movie, and whenever I looked at the
Yeah.
Oscars, the first time I ever saw it, I'm like, he's incredible in this movie. How did he not get a Best Actor nomination? What idiot won Best Actor this year? I look it up and I go, oh, Michael Douglas won Best Actor for Wall Street. So,
Oh,
so you're not allowed to be nominated twice. So
yeah.
it's like, well, he won that one, so I get that.
Yep.
But that scene where he admits to his wife that he cheated on her, that entire he, like, a lot of times, like we said, he knew he was in the wrong, so he goes into it and he kind of prostrates himself, and he is sitting there just like barely above a whisper. It says like, I cheated on her. No, I'm not in love with her. She's pregnant. She's like, oh no. It's like, and like you said, there's that, oh, I've had bad arguments, but I can't, you just want to crawl out of your skin and get away from this situation.
Oh my gosh.
and Archer equally up to the task on the other side of it. She's great. Ann Archer's great in this food. Like, just sitting there going like, obviously, like, I hate you. I don't want anything to do with you. But at the same time, I'm going to stick around for that phone call and say I'm going to kill Allex if she sticks around. Like, very mama bearish in the right way.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So this movie, they said the movie that saved 1,000 marriages. Kind of the hey, do you want to have an affair? Look at the worst case scenario of what could happen. And like you said, it's kind of that I don't take you home to mama, never sleep with crazy type side. But man, that level of crazy just.
I've heard it said, don't stick your dick in crazy.
Yeah.
And so, and then, like when at first, when they both go out for dinner initially, and she says, I'm discreet. Are you discreet? And so you're like, okay, we're discreet.
We're on
the later
on.
Yeah. Later on, I want to go, bitch, you know what discreet means?
Right? Like,
let me get you a dictionary.
It's like we were always on the same page about this. It wasn't like it was a May December romance that lasted months. This was like 2 days.
Yeah, it's not like he took his ring off and said, no, I'm single. I mean, he said, I'm married, I've got a kid.
Yes, absolutely, from the jump. In an interview in 2013, Glenn Close admitted that she said she would have probably changed her portrayal of Allex if she'd have known kind of the circumstances around today, because we will look at it and we see it as, okay, a crazy lady, but in the reality of it, she has a mental health issue. And that was not obviously there's some, obsessive personality disorder, something along those lines. And like, if you, that'd be a problem. Like, it's always one of those things you say, oh, well, if you remade it today, what would they change? It's like they would have to walk too fine of a line.
Yeah.
Between
I mean, oh God. Yeah. It's really complicated. Especially when it comes down to like bad guys, the nemesis or whatever. Because crazy has kind of been a big theme of the bad guy for so long. And so now it's kind of like, I mean, I've heard, there was controversy like with the Joker, this latest Joker and stuff like that. And it's kind of like, where is that line?
It's a screenwriting shortfall where they're just like, oh, we need to explain motivations. Like, why are they
Mhm.
being this cruel? Or like we talked about Magua last week in Last of the Mohicans. His cruelty is not just for the sake of cruelty. He has very clearly the reason why he is. He's highly motivated for this very specific reason. And
Right.
if you don't have that, you need to have a reason. And if crazy, the word crazy is there, that just explains everything.
Right.
It's a lot easier to
Yeah.
say they're nuts and that's why they're doing the thing they're doing, as opposed to
Yes.
having an actual motivation.
Right. Exactly. I mean, yeah, it's the same thing as if you say, why did Ted Bundy kill all those people? He's nuts.
Yep. I mean,
It's a lot more complex than that.
Yeah.
So yeah,
yeah,
it's just simple for us.
yeah, it's an abstract concept. It's the same. Why do we go to war for this reason? Oh, for freedom. It's like, okay, but there's a real
Right.
reason. Like, and the
Yes.
the crazy label is, that's a good point I never thought about before. The crazy label is just kind of a throw all, catch all to explain behavior you don't understand.
Yeah. I mean, it's almost lazy.
Very, very, absolutely. And
You know.
of all the things this movie does, I never think of that as lazy. And
No.
and this is the mid '80s. So much cocaine is being ingested. Like,
Oh man.
like there is no way they're like, okay, so have we thought about the implications of it? And it's like, no. This is. I really enjoy the script. The script is really intelligent about how it handles everything.
Mhm.
And like I said, like we talked about Dan being like, I'm trying to cover it, everything. And he's like, well, nobody else knows. Like we said in the opening, like his secretary definitely knows. The cop he talks to knows almost immediately. Like,
Yes.
like how you're not doing that good of a job. You just think you're doing that good of a job.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Once he was talking to the cop, well, I told my wife, my crazy Alex,
Yeah.
that whenever I was a detective in a sex crimes unit, there would be guys that would come in and try to file a police report because they're like, someone must have hacked me and like sent out all these pictures of my privates or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
And now they're blackmailing me. I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah.
And just a couple questions. You're like, bro, you sent out dick pics and now you're getting hustled over it and you've got a wife and kids and you're
Yeah.
fucking worried about it and you think a police report will cover your tracks.
It's like, oh, I need a restraining. The legal means will be something, and that it'll be the thing to save me. And it's like, no, you screwed up here. Like, and I also think like that's a really interesting aspect of it, of how bad of a job is he actually doing, and how much does Beth actually know, or is she just like, I'm sure as soon as he said, oh, I've been sleeping with somebody else, she goes, oh yeah, like that, all those kind of things put together. And why is your secretary being mean to you?
Yeah. It's yeah. I mean, to a certain extent, it kind of seems like she's whistling past a graveyard.
Yeah.
Like she sees it, but she's not going to recognize it. She's like, everything's fine. And for the most part it is.
Yeah. But
But
at the same time, like you think to yourself, like it's funny, all the things that Allex eventually does, like slitting her own wrist, obviously very manipulative early in, you're like, man, really could have dodged a bullet if you just left her alone. But I mean,
I would be like, try jumping jacks. We need to get your blood pressure up.
Pump your wrists. It's like, have you thought about wrist curls?
Yeah. I'm just going to massage your arm.
I know.
That'll help.
I know we're glorifying suicide, but the ends justify the means in this case. We take it, the spirit it's taken. But like, it's funny, all the things she does. I'm just like, acid on a car, huh? That's what you choose. Like, could have cut his brakes. Like, I guess you don't want to kill him, or just want to, like, just as well as I do, problems with your car will drive you to levels of insanity.
Yes.
It's like, if I would put like a couple tablespoons of sugar into somebody's, I didn't actually do this. I'm saying like you put a little bit of put a little sugar in their gas tank over a period of time, and they don't know what's going on. It'll drive them insane because car issues are the worst things in the world. And it's like you could replace a bunny.
Well, and it's just like, first thing in the morning, you go out to head to work and you're already like, back to the grind, and you got a flat tire, your day is shit.
And even like what you said about the anxiety, think of his anxiety of she won't stop calling. She won't stop messing with me. She keeps doing all these things, had to avoid her calls, all this kind of stuff. And then you go out and there's acid on your car. You're like, well, I know who did that. It's like, great start to this day. And then the constant tension of your day, like,
yeah.
You're right.
That's another lie. You got to do some crazy electrical thing. It just blew up.
Who knew? I didn't know it was like, did that thing kind of happen? So there was an alternate ending shot, and I believe it was tested. So from what I understand, the original ending, instead of going to the house, so they go back home after the wife, Beth, after Beth gets back, they're at home, and Allex goes to her apartment, puts on Madame Butterfly, and kills herself. But she does it in a way to make it to frame Dan for it.
Gotcha.
And okay. I believe Beth found some tapes to eventually get Dan off. But in
what way, Ben?
I like how you're doing there.
Because I saw him get off several times.
Well, but so Beth is able to exonerate Dan through tapes or something like yes. So
sorry.
And it tested very poorly, and then they went back and did the new ending. The ending in the film is extremely cathartic.
Yes.
Especially having her do it, having Beth kill her.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. It's kind of, you mentioned she takes that mama bear step of if you mess with my family, I'll kill you.
Yeah.
And finally she does the ultimate mama bear and puts down the threat to her family. So it is cathartic. I think it's because when I thought Allex was dead, in the water drowned, I was kind of like, well, okay, the bitch is dead, good. But it's kind of anticlimactic a little bit.
Yeah.
And then she jumps up and scared the shit out of me. And then it is a very cathartic end.
Yes. And Glenn Close apparently suffered concussion during that scene. Being held underwater for a long period of time, was pregnant at the time in real life. It worked out. Her child was born without problems. But I mean, that scene in general, like, it's just, everything seems to coming down because obviously now, so since she took Ellen, cops are after her with purpose. It's like, okay, she's going to go down for this. It's like, cool.
They've got a charge. Yeah.
They got a charge. Beth's back. Everybody's at home. It's like, seems like everything's fine. And then Allex shows up and you're like, oh boy. Like it's a different type of tension now. You're just like, okay, again, with crazy, you're like, how do I deal with it's not having to deal with crazy. It's facing off against crazy. It's like, there's a level she'll go to that you probably won't go to.
Right. But honestly, like that conflict, once it's there where it's like, okay, this is going to be a fight to the death.
Yes.
Okay. That's like, I'm not uncomfortable with that.
Yes.
Conflict. It's everything leading up to it. I mean, you would think a lady coming at you with a knife would be scarier, but a lady with information that you really don't want going around, to me, is scarier.
Like I said, the entire time, like all the information, and he's just like, and it's the truth will set you free. He finally gives the truth, and the solution to all his problems earlier would have been to tell her earlier. And she's like,
Yeah.
this lady's crazy. And I'm not saying she would have killed herself earlier, but the Allex just keeps going back and back. And obviously the famous line, "I won't be ignored." It's the very, and that was in the middle of that speech of like, you just wanted to use me and all that kind of stuff. It's like, I'm not going to be ignored. I'm like, well, that's the only part of that where you're like, well, why can't I ignore you? Like, and also, do you think the pregnancy was real? Because she doesn't give any inclination that it's not, but she's also insane.
Yeah, you really have no idea.
Yeah. And that's, I think, a good thing the film does.
Yeah. I mean, because you can't trust anything that she says. So you really don't know. And so that, I mean, yeah, that causes kind of more conflict, because then you don't know how to feel about Michael Douglas. Is like, okay, is he not stepping up and taking responsibility for something, or is he not falling for this hoax?
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean,
you know what I mean?
And it's in a weird kind of way, her dying in the way she died fixes every problem, even if it was the case. So, I mean, it's not the solution obviously you want, but it's all the killing bunnies, acid on cars, it's ellipsis. It's ... what's going to happen next?
Yeah.
That's a period. Like, she's dead.
Yeah.
It's essentially the first time in an hour and a half you can take a breath.
Yeah, no kidding.
And this movie flies.
Yeah, it's tense.
It's tense. It's 2 hours of full info. Like, there's not really anything I would be like, oh, we got to take this out or trim this. It's like, everything's important. Everything.
Not really. It's pretty much to the point. Like, every scene is.
It's like, okay,
meaningful.
we have this to establish this. We have this to establish this. It's like, this goes further, and just trying to go back and forth, and it all works. I really like, it's really about the main three. There's not really anybody who else kind of sets themselves aside and be like, oh yeah, this is an extra supporting character in this movie. Like, I like Lois Smith as his secretary, just because she knows what's up so early. And Fred Gwynn, always nice to see Mr. Munster hanging around.
Yeah. I said that to my crazy Allex, and I said, that's Herman Munster. She goes, who? I said, Mr. Munster, the Munsters, the Munster family.
Yeah.
She was like, nah, got nothing. I had to pull up a picture. She's like, oh,
we're in an interesting generation where we weren't alive during the Munsters, but we were young enough to watch reruns of like the Munsters, Dick Van Dyke, Mary Tyler Moore, all those type of shows were the reruns on Nick at Night. So we watched the Munsters all the time, and all that kind of like, so we see him, it's like, yeah, Mr. Munster. It's like, how do you know Mr. Munster? It's just kind of that in between.
It's basically the equivalent of like our kids seeing reruns of Seinfeld or Friends or Everybody Loves Raymond or something like that.
Yeah. So this movie is just so full of tension. I went into it thinking this is going to be a trashy kind of thriller, like one of those erotic thrillers. And the erotic part ends after about 30 minutes. Like 30 minutes in, you're like, okay, no more sexy fun time. It's all the thriller parts. It's, you kind of go that slot, and you kind of look at Michael Douglas too, and you think of more Basic Instinct, which is much more like lascivious and like much more kind of lowbrow. Gratuitous is a good word for it. Yeah. And this one is much more like, no, this is an adult drama. We just have to portray everything in a certain way. But,
yeah. Well, and they have to, I think you got to definitely portray, those sequences, like it's a wild sexual weekend fling, because the entire remainder of the movie is dealing with the conflict from that. The entire rest of the movie is consequences of a series of bad decisions.
Hey, you remember all that fun time we had? And like after about 30 minutes and all the crazy stuff she does, you go, no, I don't remember all the good times. It takes it all away just because of how crazy she gets. So
Yeah.
all right, let's take a quick break and we'll come right back. All right, we are back. And Jake, it is now time for my favorite segment of the week. It is Poll for a Dumbass. Every week I go through the filmography of a filmmaker and put Jake's cinematic knowledge to the test. We are talking about the Academy Award nominated actress, star of this film, Glenn Close. She has famously been nominated for an Oscar more than anybody else to never have won. She's actually tied. She's one of the 5 most nominated actresses in Oscar history. She continually loses, very graciously, though, I might add. Probably should have won a couple times, but we will get into it as we go along. Her filmography is not that extensive. She was very much a TV, and not TV so much, but definitely a theater lady. She was on theater a lot. And then whenever she came to prominence, she came kind of like a shot out of like just out of nowhere. A movie with in 1982, her film debut, Oscar nominated for Best Supporting Actress, co-starring Robin Williams in a movie I bet you never heard of, The World According to Garp.
Never heard of it.
It is a very strange movie. In it, John Lithgow plays a transsexual. And it is as odd as that sounds. That is the 30th weirdest thing about that movie. It's very strange. She's good in it, but it's an odd duck of a movie. So that was her first ever movie. She gets an Oscar nomination her first try. Her second film she was ever in, she also got an Oscar nomination. A very much yuppie 80s, like if the Breakfast Club were in their 30s, The Big Chill.
Ooh,
I've heard. I guarantee it's been on TV whenever we've been around.
I believe I've heard of it, but I couldn't really tell you anything about it, so I wouldn't count that as a watch.
I also haven't seen it. It was nominated for Best Picture that year. Very much a a monster cast: Tom Berenger, Glenn Close, Jeff Goldblum, William Hurt, Kevin Kline. It kind of whenever they were not really who they were yet.
Right.
It was very much one of those type of like sad people in their 30s, but I'm going to get around to it eventually, but I have not seen it either. But as I said, nominated for her first 2 movies. She actually had 3 Oscar nominations in her first 3 movies, because her third movie as maybe the most lovely she's ever been on a film, as Ruth Hillerman as Iris Gaines, in The Natural.
Yes.
Yes, one of the ladies of Robert Redford's eye.
Yeah.
That movie is not, everybody talks about The Natural and is like, man, I love The Natural. I'm just like, I'm sure I've seen it all the way through. I'm sure I've seen it more than all the way through more than once. I have so little memory of it outside of the end of the movie.
Yeah.
Whenever he hits the home run. I
watched it a bunch with our granddad.
Yeah.
He really liked it. So
she gets 3 Oscar nominations her first 3 movies, and kind of the critical darling, not exactly the financial success, but still Natural, big success. Big Show was big success. Still does a lot of theater stuff in addition to her movies, so she doesn't work a whole lot. She did a couple schlocky movies in the 80s, makes Fatal Attraction, and then turns her kind of into a superstar. She goes back to back with Oscar nominations again, 87 Fatal Attraction, and then 1988, a really interesting movie. I don't know if I love it, but it's well done. The costume sexual drama, Dangerous Liaisons.
I don't think I have.
Michelle Pfeiffer's in that movie, and it's 1989 Michelle Pfeiffer. Maybe the most beautiful human to have ever existed. It is incredible how beautiful she is in that movie. John Malkovich being very Malkovichian, miscast, but in the movie, Glenn Close is spectacular in it. But so gets another Oscar nomination. So she's 5 Oscar nominations in after being only 6 years in movies, essentially. So everybody's like, okay, Glenn Close is the thing. She's going to be a thing, and she really took a step back essentially and was just doing little stuff. She was in a movie called Reversal of Fortune with Jeremy Irons. I won't mention that one, but another movie in 1990. I just wanted a chance to talk about this movie. I'm sure you've seen it. The version, one of the versions of Hamlet in 1990. This is not the Kenneth Branagh one with everybody in it. This is probably the one you saw in school with Mel Gibson as Hamlet. Have you seen that version of Hamlet?
Golly, I don't know. I've seen several versions.
So there's the Kenneth Branagh one where he has blonde hair and everybody, like Billy Crystal is in that version of Hamlet. Kate Winslet. I need to pull. So this is a good time for me to look it up. The 1996, I think it's 1996. Yeah, the 1996 version of Hamlet, directed and starring Kenneth Branagh as Hamlet. I'm going to tell you this cast, and it is out of control. Kenneth Branagh, Oscar winner Julie Christie, Kate Winslet before anybody knew who she was. Supporting characters: Robin Williams, Jack Lemmon, Billy Crystal, Charlton Heston, Richard Attenborough, John Gielgud, Judi Dench. I think there was like 7 other people that have just like bit parts. Like I said, I think like Billy Crystal is in it as a gravedigger for no reason. Like it's just a stack I think that's a 4-hour version. Yeah. But the one with Mel Gibson,
kind of like actually reading Shakespeare. It's like,
yeah, the Mel Gibson version's a little darker, a little moodier. But she plays.
I can't say that I've seen it.
Okay, I'm not surprised. Now, a movie you have seen, I'm pretty sure you've seen. I know you've definitely seen the animated version of one. Now, this is the first time they started to be like, okay, I'm going to start. I'm sorry. I can't believe I skipped one. I'm not going to include this in the rundown because I know you've seen the movie. She was in Hook. Do you know who she played in Hook?
Yep. The one that goes in the boob box.
Yep. Plays a man. And looking back on it, you're like, why is Glenn Close in this movie?
Yeah, and I had heard that due to working with Robin Williams previously, that he was like, hey, you want to do a cameo like as a pirate? And she was like, sure. Yeah. Apparently George Lucas and Carrie Fisher are also in that movie, just randomly. Like, so yeah.
I mean,
well, I like how Phil Collins is in it. Dustin Hoffman's not even recognizable hardly.
Yeah, it's great. Like we're gonna do Hook one day. And the problem,
we'll have to. I like Hook.
The problem is we're gonna rewatch it and go, oh no, this movie's not very good. I'm worried. I'm worried about that being the case.
Yeah,
but
could be.
Oh well, we'll figure it out. So she had a run of just the smaller stuff in the 90s, and then she really kind of became a box office draw again in 1996. Probably her most famous movie up to that point, where people are like, oh, this is your role I associated with you with. Cruella de Vil in the live action 101 Dalmatians.
Yeah.
Yep. And she's really good in it. She's really good as a kind of playing it up to that level. She was a good fit there. Also a good fit. Probably the thing I think about her in more than anything else, as far as like, what's the thing you think about Glenn Close in? It's a very non-actory role. How about Vice President Catherine Bennett in Air Force One?
Yeah.
I mean, you look back on it, she's the least memorable part of that. Yeah. There's so much like Gary Oldman chewing on every piece of scenery he can. Harrison Ford being incredibly Harrison Fordy, like all the stuff.
Get off my plane.
Everything you remember about that movie, you're like, oh yeah, Glenn Close is in that movie. I don't think she stands up from her chair at any point. I think she's sitting down the entire movie. So, but whatever. She does also some voice work. Very famously, same year, the next year, from Air Force One in 1999's, plays the mom in Tarzan.
I've seen it at some point.
Speaking of Phil Collins, especially, she just like
there you go.
Yeah, so I was looking through the movies. I was like, okay, she's, there's going to be all this kind of stuff I can throw up there, and I'm like, not really. Like, she doesn't really. I guess the advantage of making having her success at the level she had that early and making Fatal Attraction and having all that money is she gets to be choosy. And
yeah,
she doesn't necessarily do all the stuff she expects you to do. In
yeah,
fact,
and that's ultimately, I think, where everyone wants to be in whatever career they have, is where you don't have to pinch every penny and jump on every single crappy job. You can go.
And these next two movies, I'm going to specifically highlight that. So she was Oscar nominated, kind of a little bit of a gap between her recent Oscar nominations from Dangerous Liaisons, but she was Oscar nominated again for a movie called Albert Nobbs in 2011. I know you haven't seen it because I've barely seen it. She plays a butler masquerading as a man. She's a woman. She's acting like a man for the sake of having the job. So I know you hadn't seen that, but the reason I bring that up is because, have you seen the Marvel movie Guardians of the Galaxy?
No.
Okay, so Guardians of the Galaxy she plays like a diplomatish, mayoralish person. She's really sleepwalking through Guardians of the Galaxy. And somebody asked her, like, why are you doing Guardians of the Galaxy? She's like, I do Guardians of the Galaxy. I can make Albert Nobbs. Like, I get the paycheck and I can make the small movie that I want to make. So she knows exactly what's going on. Like,
okay,
she knows the logistics.
I can appreciate that.
I can appreciate it too. Yeah. Okay. So making a little bit of things here and there, does some voice work here and there, small stuff again. She gets another Oscar nomination in 2017, famously for a movie called The Wife. You haven't seen the movie The Wife. She is a wife to a Nobel laureate or a Pulitzer or whatever. And it's kind of like, she's kind of the mystery of the movie is that she actually did all the work and he's just been kind of the figurehead of it all.
Okay.
So everybody decided when they first heard of The Wife, even though nobody saw it, you're like, okay, this is the movie Glenn Close wins her Oscar. This is the one. And went into it. She gets the nomination, even though nobody really saw the movie. Nobody really liked the movie. She gets her nomination. I saw the movie. She's good in it. Gets nominated with a bunch of other people. Lady Gaga's nominated for Star is Born, but everybody's like, it's fine. It's going to be Glenn Close. The Oscars show up and they give the Oscar to Olivia Colman, who at the time nobody really knew. And they give her to the movie The Favorite. And it blows everybody away. Everybody can't believe that Glenn Close lost an Oscar again. This was her 7th Oscar nomination.
Jeez.
And she lost again. So she finally loses. She loses again. Everybody, now it's kind of a running joke of like, Glenn Close is never going to win an Oscar. Let's just pencil her in. And she gets another Oscar nomination in 2020 for a movie, Hillbilly Elegy. Have you seen the film Hillbilly Elegy?
I have.
What were your thoughts on Hillbilly Elegy?
Mixed.
I thought it was so terrible. I thought it was like, there were parts of it that were so bad. And it was hard to take away. She got another Oscar nomination for it, the supporting actress. She did not win. Nobody expected her to, but I thought she did a fine job in it. But yeah. And so everybody's kind of like, okay, so it's a running joke about when's the next time she's going to get an Oscar nomination. One more movie to mention from last year. It's going to be 2021. Have you seen the movie Swan Song on Apple?
No.
It's good. It stars Mahershala Ali as a guy who was dying of cancer, and he keeps it from his family and then goes to rural British Columbia to be cloned and replaced by a exact version of himself for the sake of his family. His family never knows. And she plays like the person in charge of the clone. It's, it sounds on paper like, oh, it's going to be like nefarious and like down. It's not really. It's kind of like a nice, gentle
swan song.
I recommend it. So go seek it out if you have the chance. Yeah. So that just about does it for Glenn Close's filmography. She's kind of, like I said, she's kind of all over the place, but there's always a good reason for it. Got some other stuff coming down the pipe. She's doing horror thriller films with director Lee Daniels. She's going to be the mother of a pair of there's a movie coming out called Brothers, starring Josh Brolin and Peter Dinklage. a twins-like movie where brothers played by Josh Brolin and Peter Dinklage are mismatched, obviously, and hijinks ensue. So she'll be in that. But it's, you don't really think of Glenn Close. She's not really the box office draw. You don't really think of her as like, I got to see this new Glenn Close movie, especially at this point of her age. But 8 Oscar nominations, no wins. I'm sure she'll get an honorary one throughout the years. You did a little better than I expected. You went 5 out of 13. The Natural, 101 Dalmatians, Air Force One, Tarzan, and Hillbilly Elegy. And I guess I'd give you Hook if you want the extra. So 6 out of 4, 6 out of 14. Not so bad.
All right.
All right. That just about does it for me. Jake, what do you got for me?
Well, it's not the boo box.
Not the
but
box.
It's the hot box.
I'm in the hot box. Each episode, instead of me steering the conversation, Jake peppers me with a series of questions that I must answer truthfully. Sometimes it's just trivia. Sometimes it's not. I am confident you cannot answer anything that's going to shake me because I know in my heart I have not committed adultery, so I don't have to worry about whatever you ask me. What you got for me?
Well, I'll admit I had a hard time coming up with questions.
Sure.
I mean, the whole thing's about infidelity.
Yeah.
And it's like,
what are we going to talk about? Yeah.
But, all right. This is the first thing that came to my mind, though.
Okay.
There's obviously the infamous boiling rabbit scene.
Yes.
Have you ever eaten rabbit?
Whew, I'm sure I have. I can't say for a fact of like, oh, I've killed a rabbit, eaten it, and gone from there, but I'm sure I have. I've heard rabbit is actually bad for you to eat because it has no nutritional value outside of pure protein. It's So I've heard no fats, no carbs, like
surviving off of it. It's a form of malnutrition. Basically, they call it rabbit starvation.
Oh, okay. So
but it's basically malnutrition, not starvation. It's just not, if that's all you're eating, it's not giving you all the other stuff you need. All you're getting is just protein blocks.
So I've heard it's it's the opposite of a potato. Like a potato is the perfect food to be like, if you eat a potato every day for the rest of your life, you can live off that. Like you don't need anything else based off it. And rabbits are now, I can't think, do you remember anything from our childhood or anything where rabbit food was involved?
No, the only time I know of that I've eaten rabbit was I got friggin' inspired a couple years back. I guess this was like during COVID. And so everyone was kind of thinking like, how can we make it? How can we,
Yeah.
And I was like, we could make it out here. We've got so much wildlife and all this stuff. And I was like, I've never eaten rabbit and we have so many of them.
Sure.
I'm going to get a couple rabbits and cook them up. So I shot a couple rabbits, cleaned them up, all that, and then I boiled them down in a stew to just, more like, a stew or roast type meat.
Sure.
It looked okay. It smelled okay. But you know how some kinds of fish or seafood taste real fishy?
Is that what
it tastes? Real rabbity.
I don't know what rabbit tastes like, and I know what you mean. Like it's just
a funky, gamey taste.
Sure.
Now, I don't claim to have prepared it correctly.
Sure. You might have to do certain things with rabbits that you don't have to do normally. Like that makes sense. So
like maybe if I bled them out before or something like that. But I don't know.
Okay. Well,
my first experience was not positive.
I can't. I would be shocked if I haven't. But it also, like, I can't remember having specific, like, it's not like frog legs. It's like, oh, I remember I've had that specifically.
Right.
Or whatever it is, calf fries, be that whatever weird food.
Yeah.
I don't.
The dove that ran into our sliding glass door.
I don't specifically remember the rabbit.
Yeah.
So, oh well.
Okay. What do you think is the most, I'll see if you agree with me, but
Okay.
just the worst, most painful scene in this movie?
As far as just like
Just heart-wrenching and just feeling so guilty of where you are, what you've done.
so it's after he admits it and he's talking to Ellen, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, is that the one you're thinking of?
But it's a kiddo.
Yeah, the Ellen, the girl.
Oh yeah, sorry.
So him talking like, and not only that, it's like Ellen's young enough where she almost doesn't understand. Like
they get more than you think.
More than you think, but you can't explain why you have to leave. In a way where they're like, well, daddy made a mistake. And so like, or whatever he has, like, it's yeah, exactly. That's a bad part. And
because, and we've discussed this before. So I hope I'm not stepping on your toes or anything like that, but you have been divorced.
I have.
However, y'all did not have children.
Correct.
So y'all could basically kind of
clear separation. Right. I don't have to worry about any of that kind of stuff. Exactly.
Like just imagine what that process would have been like with your two kids and having to try to explain mom and dad aren't going to live together anymore, but we still both love you and just bleh.
I mean,
it's just horrible. I mean,
not even a fantasy. I always kind of like went through in my head about like the steps of like, okay, let's say hypothetically I had an adulterous episode. I go find some woman and we have this crazy weekend of sex and it changes my life and I fall in love with her. And because of that, and then I kind of go down the steps of how realistically that would happen and just the hell of telling the kids and all that kind of stuff. And then like, oh, the kid's okay with her and all that kind of, and then all that down it's just a snowball of hell. And then, I was thinking,
I mean, you'd have to talk to mom and say, oh, this is what I did. And
yes. And
this is why I'm,
And everybody who looks at you sideways, they're like, well, they know I'm a shit. Like it's, like just, no.
That guilty conscience, the telltale heart.
That's the one thing that he kind of does really well in this movie. At least he puts on that he does really well. He does a pretty good job of acting like he didn't do a ton wrong to her, to Beth before everything eventually comes out. Like he does a good job of putting on that he didn't, like, he's guilty, obviously.
Yeah. But yeah, they kind of built, I mean, he really does seem like a good husband and a good dad.
It's just literally,
thought with his dick for the weekend.
In detective terms, motive and opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was, it's not necessarily, he wasn't like, yes, my wife's out of town so I can cheat on her. My wife's out of town, went to dinner, and then she's down, I'm down.
Yeah,
my wife's out of town. Let's do this. And
she said she was going to be discreet, but
as we've established, she's not discreet. But I mean,
she's not. She isn't.
Yeah.
No.
But I mean, and that's the funny thing. I was thinking that same thought train. We're like, okay, well, what if you do all that and all that thought experiment, but at the same time, like, oh, this crazy sex, and what if the sex is bad and you did and you might have just ruined your family for nothing?
Yeah. Damn it. And she gave you an STD.
Oh, yeah. It's like, I'm sure those stories are out there where they're just like, I decided to cheat for the first time and it went soda pot and all that kind of, like you said, it's like, well, I got hacked. And it's like, sure. Like, but I can sleep soundly at night, not having to worry that I don't have an Allex on my, now I don't have to worry about the Allex sleeping next to me.
You know how you said, we said you don't stick your dick in crazy. I married it.
All joking aside.
Had kids with it.
All joking aside. Oh, her name's Allex. It's the same. she's named after the character in this movie.
Yes, specifically my mother-in-law.
Oh man.
Expecting a beautiful young baby girl, a newborn baby girl. What to name her? Well, she watched this fucking movie and went,
Nailed
I
it.
know what I'll name her.
Allex.
Alex.
I love it.
I told I told my Alex, I was like, that's like if we were trying to decide on a name on our son, and I watched a World War II documentary and went, hey, how about Adolf?
Adolf, or like it's like watch Silence of the Lambs. Lecter's really doing it for me for a first name. Like
Hannibal. How do you feel about Hannibal?
Yeah, it's one of the all-time movie villains. And she's like, you know what? Like, I guess I'm gonna get away with it, but
Yeah, sure enough.
oh well, it works out.
Oh well. Okay. What there is a supporting actress in this film
Yes.
that is also in another film that we have done an episode on.
Okay.
So tell me who it is.
Ooh. So just off the top of my head, I'm assuming it is Jane Krakowski. Just because it was like I know she was
Not
the
that I know
babysitter.
of.
Okay, so let's see. I'm trying to think if Ann Archer was in anything that we've already talked about. No, I don't think so. So Ellen Foley? She's from Night Court. I'm let me see here. Did I miss something with Lois Smith, the secretary? She's been in a ton of stuff. Who am I missing here?
Christmas Vacation is the movie we did.
Okay. So it's probably one of the older ladies.
Okay.
So I'm probably, man, I'm disappointed in myself. Jeez. Is it?
I was able to figure this out.
Okay, so I'm coming up blank here, buddy. What do you got? So who is this?
Okay, Ellen.
Ellen, really?
She is the niece. The
Oh,
little girl niece.
she's Ruby
I can't-
Sue.
Yep.
The
Yeah.
big haired Ruby Sue is. Oh wow.
Yep.
And you know what's funny is
One and the
because
same.
she seems so tiny in this movie, and she doesn't seem as tiny. I know it's 2 years difference, obviously, but oh man, that's crazy.
Well, yeah. Me and my crazy Alex were watching it, and there's one scene where he's like tucking her in. Michael Douglas is tucking her in or something. And you can see she has a scar, I believe, over her eyebrow.
Oh.
And all of a sudden, me and my crazy Alex went, she looks just like, I went, Christmas Vacation. And
Sure enough.
Sure is.
I mean, what are the chances? I should have known that. I guess I just never thought of like her being the case. So she has that definitive scar across her face. I guess she doesn't, who looks to think she hasn't really worked since the 90s. So, I mean, you know.
Yeah, I think she was just a child actor.
Child actress, get out of it. It's fine. But I mean.
Cute as button back then, though.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to be in 2 movies, you get 2 movies in the first 32 that we cover, you're doing okay in life. And
hey. You did more before you were out of elementary than I did. So.
Okay, Jake, I wanted to ask you, I forgot to mention this. So Michael Douglas has 2 Oscars. He has, he won the Oscar the same year for Best Actor for Wall Street. He won, do you know what his other Oscar win is for? It came in 1975.
Damn, he had to be young then.
Yes, he was young.
Shit. I don't know.
So being the advantage of being a son of a very famous movie star is you have a lot of money. Without a lot of money, you can kind of do whatever you want. He decided to produce. He produced One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Ooh.
So the Best Picture winner was actually awarded to Michael Douglas in 1975. So he technically won his first Oscar was Best Picture. So,
ooh, I'm kind of chomping at the bit to get to that one.
We'll get to One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. I mean, that's up there. We got a lot of stuff to get to with that because, yeah, talk about crazy.
Yeah,
yeah. So I'm sure that'll be on the list probably in March.
Yeah, probably so.
Yeah. So yeah, Michael Douglas, 2 Oscars, Wall Street, and then One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, undefeated.
Yeah. All right. Next question.
Yes.
At what point do you kill that crazy ass bitch?
So whenever he stops himself the first time, whenever he almost kills her and he stops himself, I'm like, nope, you kill her, because is it justifiable homicide? Yes. No, it's not just, sorry, it's not just foul. It's probably 3rd degree murder, manslaughter, whatever, 2nd degree. But it's one of those things. Do you know those situations where, a guy had a mask on, and whenever his daughter's rapist was coming through the airport, he shot him 4 times and killed him?
Oh yeah.
It's one of those situations where they're like, he kidnapped my daughter and I went and strangled her. It's one of those, put me in front of a jury and see what sentence they give me. Like,
exactly.
And so, I mean, I think you kill her there and you sleep well at night, because you're like, it's one thing to mess with me.
Yeah.
It's another thing messing with the kids. Like,
that's exactly what I said during that part. I was like, okay, you can mess with me. You can mess with my career.
Yep.
You can mess with my marriage. You mess with my kid, you're dead meat.
Nope.
You're done.
Yeah. Yep. There is no coming back.
You're done.
Yep. And
you're going to be a threat to my kids. I'm going to take you out.
Now, don't me like, and I'd probably act like Michael Douglas and be, when she slit her wrists, and be like, oh, I don't want her to die. She's got issues to deal with. Probably not. But I mean, her dying there.
But I told my crazy Allex that, what if at that point, now I know mental health resources weren't what
Obviously,
they are.
Yes.
Now, even though I think they're kind of lacking still, but anyways, what happens if at that point he just calls the police and gets her taken in for a mental health evaluation?
Yeah.
And she's obviously made a suicide attempt, committed self-harm, obviously a danger to herself. So,
and it sets
shouldn't she be in a mental health facility? And it
sets a precedent. Like, whenever he wants to do a restraining order, you're like, hey, I'm on record as being a part of this, so I should get a restraining order, right? Like, and it essentially, it boosts his case. That's a good point. Like
I think that was probably the point where you could just kind of, okay, if I get caught in this or whatever, this is my best exit strategy here is I'm going to call the cops. She's suicidal. She slit her wrists.
Okay. So do you find Glenn Close attractive in this movie?
No.
Okay. That's kind of the overarching question.
If I'm going to ruin my goddamn life, it better look better than that.
I mean, I get what she was doing. And I guess that's one of the reasons that everybody was like, well, Glenn Close is wrong for this movie, is because you kind of like if you look at Basic Instinct's a great example. Early 90s Sharon Stone was lighting the world on fire. She was nuts, but man, she was beautiful. And that's kind of the, I believe the word is suspension of disbelief with this movie.
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah.
that's the only leap this movie really has to take, is that like Glenn Close has that thing,
Yeah.
but and I agree, and I don't think I always Glenn Close I always look at it as a handsome woman. I don't necessarily think of her
Yeah,
as
like I
she's not
don't
ugly.
think I don't think she's ugly, but she's got a unique appearance, and
Yes.
it's not traditionally beautiful, I guess you would say. I mean, uh I don't know. I don't want to be offensive or anything,
No, I know what you
you know,
mean. I know what you mean.
but
And yeah.
but I always thought if I cheated on my wife, I would want her to like look up a picture of her and go, well, I
Okay.
kind of see his
Yeah,
point.
yeah.
Like,
I know what you mean. It's like you said, if you're gonna potentially ruin your life, you want to make it worth your while.
and
And
go,
okay, well, yeah, exactly. And that's the big leap this movie does take. And
now, don't get me wrong. My wife would still absolutely murder me,
sure, yeah, mine too. Yeah, exactly.
but I would
Like,
just,
yeah,
okay,
you could kind of just go to the, it's like, well, look,
I
like,
messed up
yeah, I messed up, and
because of that.
exactly, yeah.
Look
So
at me, and she gave me up. I mean,
who am I to say no to this? I get you.
what is that supposed to do?
Yeah.
Shit. All right. Have you ever had a stalkery ex, or an ex that you couldn't get rid of?
I've
Or
been lucky that that's not been the case. I've, I'm famously monogamous for long period. Like I would have long relationships.
yeah.
And so whenever they come to ends, they essentially come to ends very like writings on the wall.
Mainly.
Okay, this has happened. It's like it's there's no ambiguity between it. It's not like I was squeezing out of it. So no, I've had no problems with that. I've had friends who've been like, break up, get together, break up, get back together. So, well, why do you get back together? Well, it's like, well, she called me and see if you want to, like, I was like, okay, well, it's like, you just know, idiot
I was
friends.
watching that Seinfeld episode the other day where Kramer breaks up with a chick,
Yeah.
and then everyone just talks shit on her, and he gets back with her, and then they're like, "Oh, that's great. She's wonderful." And he's like, "You think I forgot what you said about her?" And all that. It's like you got to watch out if
Yeah, we
what you say during a breakup.
and I've had that exact situation of a couple and talking and being like, oh, they broke up, and we're like, we always hated him, and then they got back together. They got back together, got married, and like it's you're just kind of go, yeah, totally. Like
I was drunk. I don't know.
No, I never. I've been lucky enough to never have stalker situations. Now I've seen. There's a very famous video I think I've seen on Reddit of a lady like doing a TikTok dance in her living room, and her stalker comes into the window, and you're just like, oh, like on paper, stalkers seem pretty, on paper, you're like, oh, a guy was hanging out, outside of fence or whatever. And then you put it in those situations, you're like, oh, that seems utterly terrifying.
All right. Well, sounds like you were much luckier than Dan Gallagher.
Yeah, I've been like, maybe it helps that I don't have sex with other women when I'm married. So, I mean,
I think that's helpful.
It's helpful. Before we go, Jake, what is your film rating of Fatal Attraction?
I think it's well done.
Agree.
It's very thought provoking.
Mm-hmm.
It's very anxiety inducing.
Mm.
And for that reason, or those reasons, I like it. I don't want to watch it again.
Yeah, I get exactly what you mean. Like you said this about Brokeback Mountain. Like it was so sad, and it was well done. It's like, doesn't mean I want to watch it. It's not a very watchable movie. I get that part. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and I mean, it just makes you think about marital problems and everything, and it's like, man, we get enough on our own, you know, like we don't need to be thinking about crazier stuff than we, you know.
It's like not cheating. We have the issues we have. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I agree.
Like we bitch about who left the light on or, you know.
Yeah. I gave it a 4.0 out of 5. It's kind of same thing with you. It's like great script, exceptional performances. You know, not the erotic thriller you think it is. And really well done.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen it, go see it. I'm always curious what this is viewed from a woman's perspective, because we're two married men and we see it from the view of like, oh man, I'm terrified of the potential of everything. So
yeah,
but
this movie made my penis scared.
Did it clench your Peter hole?
Frightened. Yeah. Pretty much.
Okay.
Shrunk it like a turtle. It got scared, frightened turtle. It just I ain't using that thing.
On that note, that just about does it for this episode of the Film Critic and the Common Man. Thank you so very much for joining us. You can follow me on Twitter at NebIsBen and on Letterboxd at Neb810, on Instagram, Ben Miller Movies. Check out my website, Ice Cream for Freaks. You can follow my other writing at the Film Experience and Cinema Scholars. We're doing some Oscar volleys about the nominees of, I think I'm doing the best original score nominees this year. We're also doing some supporting actor, I think. Be looking out for that the next couple of weeks. Just did a podcast on another guy's on the Lone Acting nominees. Great podcast over there. Hop on over and see all the various stuff I do. Jake, where can the people find you down in your upstate New York family home covered with rabbits?
You can't find me, but I will say I married my crazy Allex, and where I'll be tonight is sleeping soundly next to her. She's the love of my life, and there's no other crazy bitch on this earth than that I'd rather be with than the Allex I got in there. So that's where I'll be. And you can't find me.
You can't contact him. So I'm sorry about that. Make sure to follow the podcast on Twitter at Critic Common Pod.
I changed my number.
Please like, subscribe, rate, and review. Enjoy the show wherever you get your podcast. Thank you so much for listening and watching us lately. Last Mohicans was our best episode ever, views wise. Who knew? So please, thank you so very much. We are aware of every view, every comment. We
Seriously,
love everyone.
Guys.
Thank you so very much. We got the rest of February lined up for the rest of romantic-esque movies. Our version. Out of Sight coming up next. Very much probably the most romantic of it, though it's not really, obviously other stuff's going on. So
I'm horny already. Sorry.
So we will catch you guys next time. Thanks so very much for having us.
What's the trick? What's the trick? In making my love stick. What's the trick?